Hi, everybody. Welcome back to RVAsec 2023. Chuck Harold from SecurityGuideTV.com. Our next guest, what's your name, sir?
Fletcher Davis.
By the way, that's a very cool name, Fletcher.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Super cool name. Who do you work for?
CrowdStrike. I'm a senior red team consultant there.
And you gave a lecture today.
Yes.
You gave a lecture,
yes,
yeah.
yep.
Tell us what it's about.
So today's presentation was on shifting how operators think and approach red teaming, red team operations. And so mine was a very high-level talk about the psychological aspects of an operation, how we target organizations. Organizations are, everyone thinks of them as very technical things, but actually in reality they are, very psychological, very human-based. And so
there's strategy, as one of our presidents said, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about strategy and stuff. And so understanding both the technical but also the human aspect of it. So that's a big part of my talk. Also discussing kind of how I think a lot of threat actors now, or a lot of threat hunters, look at it like anomaly detections, and so this is very much more how do we kind of look at it from an offensive perspective. So the reverse of anomaly is normality, and so how from an offensive perspective can we use the same telemetry or same data, and look at how we can blend in our trade graph a bit more.
So if I was a bad guy, I'd want to appear as normal as possible.
Exactly,
I mean, that's just like psychops.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I think everyone nowadays wants to bypass and evade things, but for me, it's like, how can I blend in as naturally as possible?
That's right.
To the environment. Yeah.
That's how you do it. Now, what is an objective abstraction? It's a good two words I never put together before.
So I think, so I want people to think when you have an objective for an operation, it's really an abstraction of many technical and psychological components. And so for us as operators to break that down to its root cause. And so, for example, if an objective is to get access to things like, a PII on a SQL server, that really can break up to, hey, what server talks to that server, who manages that server, and to understand all these different things, you might realize that data is also not just on the SQL server, but it's in many different places.
Right.
So from an operation perspective, I can tailor, hey, maybe I should target the web app instead. I have access to it versus the SQL server. I get the same data. Or the data might move from the SQL server to a data warehouse or something like that. And so it helps me as an operator to make more informed decisions before an operation.
What I'm hearing is, as practitioners, we may be thinking too tactically
exactly. Yep.
and not strategically.
Yep. I want to look at a network more holistically versus just very much tactical on the objective.
But I mean, is that just because cybersecurity people tend to have, for lack of a better term, they're specialized skills, but they're nonetheless tactical in a way?
Yes, yeah.
Push the button, write the code, stop the thing, instead of putting it all together and looking at 30,000 feet.
I tell people I operate more, I operate like I'm an admin in a network. I'm a newly onboarded employee. And so my operations are very much like, how do I blend in my trade graph? How do I think like an admin? Because then using that, I'm now able to achieve like an admin, or achieve the objective that way. So,
what's your framework for understanding normality, if there is such a word nowadays? Because nothing's normal anymore.
So pretty much, so basically it's about the normality concept. I'm taking data that's from typical like EDRs or age sensors on the system. And then pretty much taking that data, and instead of looking at it from an anomaly perspective, I'm looking at it from like, hey, like what does Slack normally do? What does Visual Studio Code normally do? And then how can I align my trade graph with that? So if that application is communicating to CloudFront or Azure CDN, if I'm in that process context, I should do the exact same thing. And so that's how you understand normality. And so that's what my framework is really doing, is taking Windows telemetry and converting it into a way that operators can operationalize.
I'm not going to phrase this right because I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But when you said that, I thought, Microsoft Word has a certain footprint.
Yep, yeah.
It looks a certain way. Even when you try to delete it, it looks a certain way, right?
Yeah.
Do we try to match behavioral analysis with the coding of the software? Is there any analysis that can be done there to say these two things don't match? If you have Word operating, you wouldn't get this behavior from it. Does that make sense?
So you kind of, as an operator, teetering between normality and like trying to achieve your objective. So like if I'm in a Word process, I might not do certain things like LDAP enumeration because Word would never do that.
Right.
So I have to be kind of careful with what I do. And so having the context allows you as an operator to make more nuanced tradecraft decisions as you operate.
So why'd you write this presentation? Who was your audience thinking about when you wrote it?
I think everyone in red teaming nowadays is so infatuated with like bypasses and getting domain administrators. Like, I want people to take a step back and look and say, this network is human. It's a human network built by humans for humans, and it's got an offense and defense are kind of the two sides of the same coin. And so we've been looking at things a bit wrong, and I want people to start taking a step back and saying, hey, we've been looking at this a bit wrong, but let's see what else we can look, how we can kind of approach it a bit differently. So I want to shift the industry and how we approach it.
Distinguish the red team from the purple team. Should we be working in purple? It sounds like you want to work in purple.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I'm doing a bit of like the IR side, the detection engineering side. So having more of a a well-rounded approach, and then it helps also defenders say, hey, as I have in the talk, like it's the same telemetry. Like and so from an offensive, from a defensive perspective, how you should be aware. Hey, maybe someone could abuse this. They may blend into where we false positive it. So how do we actually have things in place to prevent that from happening?
I heard somebody say something interesting today in an interview that red teams only need like 3 tools to get into your network, where on the blue team we're like thousands of things to stop you from getting in.
Yeah.
Why is that? That's interesting to me. It's easier to get in than it is to defend against.
Yeah, it just takes one, even an employee inside the company can use their normal access to achieve an objective, and so, you don't need many tools to achieve something. And so that's kind of the point of my talk too, is like, the goal is to limit your activity, your actions, your footprint, because the more tools you use, the more tools you burn, and the more noise you make. And so the less you have, the more hard.
It's too complex almost in a way.
Yeah, but I say from a defensive perspective, it's like finding a needle in a haystack sometimes. And I always applaud analysts and security engineers for what they do, because that's a very difficult job.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Mr. Fletcher, good luck to you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Good talk. Back in here, RVAsec 2023, Richmond, Virginia.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.